Hey listeners, did you know that Yogi Triathlete offers endurance coaching for body and mind? We offer personalized training plans for endurance sports, wellness and mindset, nutrition and recovery guidance, and race preparation and strategy, all within the supportive community of Team Yogi Triathlete. So if you're ready to conquer your fitness goals and push your limits, our endurance coaches are ready to guide you on the journey to peak performance. Go to yogitriathlete.com today to set up your free 30-minute discovery call and embrace a future of strength, stamina, and achievement. Your goals, our experience, the perfect match for unstoppable success.
There's like this little hourglass piece on the trail that kind of loops up and around. The trail kind of comes within like maybe 20, 30 feet of each other, but you have to do this like little hourglass piece, which is maybe 100 meters. Guess who comes around the corner? Jeff. He comes around the corner. Our eyes make contact. He looks at me. I look at him. And he's like, Jesse? And I look at him. I'm like, yep. And I just bolted. I started going as hard as I could go.
Welcome to the Yogi Triathlete Podcast. We are Jess and BJ, your hosts, and today we are excited to welcome Ultrarunner and recent Moab 240 victor, Jesse Haynes, to the show. Jesse has been in the ultra game for over a decade now, but has been a runner even longer. With too many races under his belt to count, Jesse has taken some epic wins, a few DNFs, and many top 10s and podium spots. Still, perhaps something even more important is that at 50 years old, Jesse appears to have found a longevity recipe in the sport of running that keeps him going and at the top of his game. Not only does running run through his bones, but it also runs through his household in partnership with his wife, Ultrarunner race director extraordinaire and YTP guest Kira Henninger, who we had on the show in November of 2020. So I can keep going, listing off all the accolades. Trust me, there are many, but I think we'd rather just hear it from the legend himself. So let's dive into this incredible win at Moab 240 and so much more. Jesse Haynes, welcome to the show.
Wow. Thank you for having me, number one. And number two, you did some research. That was pretty good. I don't even think I could have come up with all that.
Well, I started to look at Ultra sign up and, I'm like, okay, well, all right, 4 top 10 finishes, Western State. And I'm like, there's just too much here. There's too much. Like they just want to hear from you. So let's just, just dive in. But, man, you have been, I'm scrolling through Ultra sign up. I'm like, oh my gosh, his Ultra history is pretty long. You've been in the game for a long time.
That's true. And you're right. I don't even know all the. I don't know the stats on myself. I know the big points, the large points, the ones that have obviously impressed me in my own mind. But there's been quite a few races that I've done since I started in doing ultras in 2011.
Yes, 2011.
Wow.
The Oriflame, which is here in San Diego. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
How is talking about races, Moab 240 is going to be a big focus here. I want to hear all about it. But how is recovery going? I know you and Peltier both talked about this pooling of swelling that went down to your feet and lower legs. Like, first of all, is that normal? And then how are you recovering from that? Is that still around?
Okay, so is it normal? I'm not sure. Although I only have a couple people's experiences to go off of, and that it's myself and Jeff. But there's also Jeff Browning that raced it last year that said he had a bunch of remaining pooling of, it's probably mostly water weight, which he tried to get me to. He had a little bit of a take on why he thinks that happens. So we don't need to get into that really, but yes, I had from the knees down to my feet was pretty swollen for, it's slowly decreased over the course of about 4 days. It took for that to go from being super swollen to, I'd say, double, almost not double the size, but yeah, quite a bit of water holding from the knees to the feet. 4 days, about to the point where I was able to walk around without, I guess you could say, the limp or the long distance showing of the fact that you just raced. But I would say after about a week and a half, I was good. I was ready to start. I didn't really do any runs, but I was able to get around to the point where if I needed to go for a run, I could have. I couldn't tell you if I was able to run more than 5 miles because I didn't do that, but I felt good. I was actually timing one of Kira's events a week after the race, and at that race, her race, I was timing it, and I was running around back and forth to my car without any trouble. So it took about a week to get to that point. And recovery as of right now is fantastic. I haven't run super long, and by long I mean over 7 miles. But I didn't have any trouble. As a matter of fact, I'm thinking about doing her Ray Miller 50 mile, not next weekend, but the weekend after.
Mm. How about exhaustion? How about just the sleep deprivation? Did that stick around a little bit longer than the actual physical discomfort of the recovery?
That was about, I would say, 4 days also. But I think that was probably because I have to wake up so early in the morning anyway. I think I may have not been able to recover from that as fast as I could have, just being that I'm up at 4 in the morning and starting work 5 to 6, somewhere in there. So I don't get a whole lot of time to sleep and recover. Obviously, when I came home from work, I was in bed sooner than normal, but sleep deprivation was definitely the hardest part of, I would say, about the race, and recovering from it. It took me about 4 days. What was really weird was the fact that I was sweating during the night. It was crazy. I would just wake up in the middle of the night, just not drenched, but definitely noticed that I was sweating. So my body was doing some crazy stuff, that's for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like it was just off-gassing some heat, I know, after racing and stuff, the night of a race, I've never done a multi-day race like the 240, but you're just hot. There's a lot of heat in the body, from going and going and going. And it's just amazing, right? What the body needs to do to get itself back to balance. It's really a wild science experiment that we live in if you pay attention to something like recovery and how it does it all on its own, It's just amazing.
I love the way you put that. It is a science project. I should be writing all this stuff down that I go through and remember it, because over the course of racing for the last, 11, 12 years? Yeah, 12 years of racing. I'm just going off of memory in a lot of it. And if I've been writing it down, I could probably eliminate some mistakes that I still make during races that I didn't learn enough to get it to, sink in mentally. But yeah, science experiment for sure.
I did watch Jeff's recap of the race too, and I just love your perspectives are completely opposite. All the stuff that he goes into with the sleep and the planning and, where he was going to be. And then your approach, which was, I think you slept the most, was 5 or 15 minutes, maybe max. I remember you talking about, you'd set an alarm for 5 minutes and you wouldn't even get that much. But yet you won and he came in second. So there's an element of planning and doing your due diligence, but there's also this feeling of you got to work your way into it. You got to feel your way. You got to make decisions in the moment.
Oh, absolutely. That's the biggest lesson that I think I took away from the race, is that there's so many things that could change and happen. The best planning you could possibly do is not going to get you. It's not going to be 100% successful with the planning that you put in, because you just have to make so many split-second decisions. And by split second, I don't mean right there. You just have to go off of what you're feeling at the moment. And the plans that I did have, which were very loose, still did not happen. Even though I had just a loose plan, maybe if I would have had one that was more poignant, I would have stuck to it a little bit better. But in the moment, that's how I love to do all of my runs, races, is I don't really like to plan too much in advance as far as like the overall outcome or where I'm going to be doing what. Obviously, you have to have a little bit of a plan. I mean, I did some planning. I wrote down the what the forecast was for, what temperature it was going to be at what aid station, and I went through my pace as to what I thought I could do, being conservative, of course, but what the temperature was going to be at that aid station, what time of day it was going to be. I didn't have a crew, but I did have a pacer lined up, so I knew that I had to have some sort of plan so that I could make sure that I hit that spot. But mainly because it's such a drastic temperature difference in the desert, I had to make sure that I had the right clothing for the appropriate time leaving an aid station. I mean, some of the aid stations are 20 miles apart, so you're not going to see anything for the next 5-6 hours. So you have to make sure you have everything you need. So but by me saying I didn't plan, that's not a true statement. It's just I didn't stick to a certain like number of calories and all that. I just made sure I had what I needed. That's about it.
Yeah, I think we need to honor like who we are as athletes. Is, you said like that's how I love to go into races. It's like, well, I think you should follow that, right? It's like you want to be the best version of you, and figuring out what works for you and what makes your heart sing when it comes to something as epic as, the Moab 240, as opposed to being like, oh, well, Jeff, who came in second place. And I know we're going to get to that whole battle, but, well, he's doing it, maybe I should do it that way. And then we start to, become the second best version of someone else. So I think finding out, and isn't that the beauty of going long? It's like we really get some time to figure out like who we are and how we show up out there on the trail. Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
So let's dive in. Let's dive into the race. You talked a little bit just now, a few moments ago, about the planning and that you didn't have a crew. And what we have found out in our research is that your typical crew, Kira, was not available for you during the Moab.
That's right. Had I had my typical crew, I couldn't tell you what would have happened. Maybe I would have. Well, as we get into the race, you'll discover why. It's probably at times it would have been a good thing to have crew, and at times it probably would not have been good to have a crew. So yes, my typical crew, being my wife, Kira, she was doing her own event, which was Kodiak. She was attempting to do a 100-mile race herself the same exact day that we started. So she started 6 hours before me in time. And unavailable. So I just decided I'm just going to go. I'm not going to try to find a crew because that could create more logistical problems for me. I just wanted to. I also wanted to see if I could just do it with no crew. That was another thing. I wanted to try it out. So yeah, no crew. But I did accept a pacer and asked a pacer to get me to get through what I thought was going to be the crux of the race.
Yeah. So take us through it. I mean, it's like, 70, I think your time was around 70 hours.
Yeah.
So take us through that 70 hours in hour. Much less than 70 hours.
Yeah, for sure. Let me try to hit the highlights.
Yeah.
I will say that I started the race as thinking this is not a race. This is a run, because that was pretty much my only goal was to get. My A goal was to just finish it, just to see if I could do. I knew I could do it. I mean, but see if I could do it. It was, the main focus. Obviously, it's the longest I had ever run, so I didn't know what I was going to be coming up against. So my plan was to just go out and run, and I wanted to hold back in my pace. I will say that I never ever wear a watch when I race, but I was staying with Jeff Browning the day before, and even though I don't wear a watch, I love data. So I do wear a watch when I train, but I don't wear a watch when I race. And it's because I don't want to be bound to focusing on what's my heart rate, where am I at, what's my speed, am I falling behind, should I speed up? I just want to go by feel. So what he said was, I just wear the watch just to have a timepiece on my arm. I don't even look at the data. But I did wear the watch to start with because I tend to go a little bit too hard, just thinking that I am going easy. But I looked at my watch a couple times when we started, and I was in the 140 heart rate range. And I told myself I wanted to be in the 130s for most of the race, maybe even in the 120s. So when I saw my heart rate up at 140, I did slow down a little bit. So it was a different type of feel for me to be doing that. So I did find myself having to back off a little bit. But I kind of fell into place with two other runners, which one was Wes Rittner, who had finished second the year before. So he was on my radar that, we might be close to each other at some point, and I needed to watch out for him. And I also knew the name Taylor Morris because he had raced a couple of Kira's races, and I had remembered that he was a decent runner. So I thought that was one of the other people that I might fall in place with. And it just so happened that that's the way it worked. We pretty much ran for the first 25 to 30-ish miles together and just chatted a little bit. Everything was going pretty smooth. The run felt like it was going pretty easy. At one point, Wes fell off the pace a little bit, and Taylor and I just kept the pace going. It was pretty much at an aid station, I think maybe 25-ish miles in, maybe 30. And then Taylor and I just were chatting along, and all of a sudden I could notice that he was falling off. Or let's just say that I would have had to hold myself back more than I wanted to stay with him. So there was this kind of back and forth dynamic where he would, fall off a little bit and then go off up the hills. And I was like, all right, I don't want to get caught up in holding back my pace. I'm just going to go comfortable. And I slowly gapped him to the point where it was like, maybe he was 40 seconds behind me, to the point where I would look back with his headlamp back there and I couldn't see it anymore. So I knew I had put a pretty good amount of time in him, but I still felt like I was doing a decent job of pacing. That brings us to, I'm going to just fast forward to, we're in the nighttime and it's starting to get cold. We're at somewhere around mile 80. I could look back and not see any headlamps. So I was pretty much on my own, I would say from mile 40-ish to mile 80, where I started to get into the mode of, I'm starting to feel tired. So it's now, early morning. This is at one point where I said, well, I'm tired. Let me look back to see if he's close. I saw a headlamp at one point. Maybe he was 5 minutes back. So I was like, all right, I got a good 5 minutes at least on him. I didn't know for sure if it was his headlamp or not, but I remember setting my watch, or not my watch, my phone for 5 minutes, and I found a rock that looked comfortable, laid down. It took me a couple seconds, maybe 15, 20 seconds to fall asleep. And I woke up at minute 4. So I only slept, I would say, for like 3 minutes that time. So I started going again, and now I could see that it was starting to get light. So we're getting into the next day. And my plan was to hit the aid station right before you start climbing up Shea Mountain, leave the aid station, and then sleep before I started to climb up Shea Mountain. And at this point, it was now mid-morning, early morning, and I couldn't really find a comfortable spot. It didn't feel comfortable to fall asleep because it was daylight out, right? And all of a sudden now it's starting to heat up, and it was the day that the solar eclipse was happening. So I remember at one point the eclipse starting, and I was like, why does it feel like it's like noon right now? So my mind was already starting to play tricks on me because of the sleep deprivation. So why is it like noon right now? I thought to myself. I was like, oh, it's because of the solar eclipse. So that kind of messed with me. My mind said it was like late afternoon, and then the sun came back out and things started to heat up, and now it's getting to the point where it's so warm out that and I had started the climb, and I had no idea what the course was like. This climb going up to Shea Mountain was so steep and intense that I could not, I couldn't believe that, there was a climb this steep. I was like, man, I should have brought my poles. But it's on this climb that there was a number of times that I tried to lay down and go to sleep, but it was mid like noon or 1 o'clock, something like that. And so my mind again wouldn't allow me to sleep. Finally, I get to the top of this climb, and I know I'm at the top because I can see that the race course goes down, and it's at, I don't know, somewhere around mile 100, somewhere in there. And I got to the top of the climb, and I was like, all right, I am sleeping at the top of this climb because, I got into work mode going up that climb. I'm like, pushing hard, and my heart was racing. And so I got to the top of the climb, and I'm like, perfect, I'm going to sleep here. Well, wouldn't you know it, there was a bunch of people out there. I don't know if they were rounding up their cattle or if they were hunting, but I could hear their voices off in the distance, and they're like yelling. And I said, this isn't going to be good. I might fall asleep, and then all of a sudden I'm going to hear their voice and I'm going to wake up. So like, all right, I'm not going to sleep here. So I continued on, and I got up to Shea Mountain, the aid station, and that's mile 114, I think, something like that. And I got up there, and I remember talking to the medic, and I said, I need to take my shoe off. I said, I think I have a pretty good blister going on the top of my toe. I want to make sure I take care of it before it becomes a problem. And so we took my shoe off, and as I'm taking my shoe off, I was like, man, I'm so upset. I said, feels like, I'm way behind my schedule. And they said, what was your schedule? Because it's 2:15. And I pulled out my piece of paper that I had everything written on. I had a little cheat sheet, looked at my time that I was supposed to be there. And wouldn't you know it, it was 2:15 that I was supposed to be there. I hit my split at mile 114 right on the money. I could not believe it. That blew my mind. Anyway, took my shoe off, and he's like, there's nothing wrong with your toe. I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, it's been bothering me for like the last 40 miles. I've been thinking that this might end my race. And he's like, no, there's nothing wrong with it. He's like, I can wrap it up if you want, but nothing wrong. I was like, you know what? I've been trying to sleep for the last 25 miles, and I can't fall asleep, or I haven't had the opportunity to sleep. So I said, I'm going to go to the tent. Can you work on my foot while I'm trying to sleep? He's like, absolutely. So he's working on my toe and my foot, and I think I may have taken a 10-minute nap there. I think I told him I wanted to take 10 minutes. So he came and woke me up I woke up before he actually came in. I said, okay, I think I'm good. And as I was waking up and getting my shoes back on, this is the first spot that I changed shoes. So I changed my shoes, and as I was getting my stuff on and ready to go, Taylor finally came in. So Taylor had caught up to me. I don't know how far back he ever was, but he finally caught up to me. He came into that aid station before me. But one more important, he came into that aid station before I had left. Let's put it that way. So he kind of came together, and we had an exchange. But I have to back up right before I had my foot worked on. I remember Candace Burt being there, the race director, and I remember mentioning that that I had pulmonary edema starting, which was a bunch of phlegm that was in my lungs, and I was coughing it up. I was already starting to cough. So I was like, man, I'm having a hard time with, getting oxygen in. And I was like, I hope this doesn't take me out, because whatever it was, 2 months previous at Hard Rock, I had, not that I want to get into my Hard Rock story, or at all, but I had a tough time.
Okay, we'll take that one off the list.
Yeah. Well, we can get into it if we have time. I doubt we'll have time because I usually talk a lot. But
you're going to make sure we don't have time for that.
Right. I had a tough time at Hard Rock with the pulmonary edema starting. So I was like, I sure hope this doesn't happen here. I was like, I feel it starting. So I left out of that aid station, thinking that this might be a concern for me. And this is a new part of the race course leaving Shea Mountain. It used to, from that spot, you used to head down to the Dry Valley aid station, which used to be mile 143, I think. But now, this year, we had another 4,000 foot climb, or 4,000 feet of elevation gain, not 4,000 foot climb, elevation gain of 4,000 feet and 13 extra miles. So I started on that one, and I could definitely feel the pulmonary edema, starting to kick my butt. And it was coughing, and it was not being able to get oxygen in, and it was my heart racing. So it took me a long time to do that little section, to get up to the top of the climb and get back down. So much so that I finally, I know my pacer was supposed to meet me at mile 170 to take over pacing duties. But I also knew before the race had started that we had talked that he might be at Dry Valley aid station, which was, I still think it was mile 140 something. Somehow the race course had less miles on the front end, something like that. But he was supposed to possibly meet me at Dry Valley. Well, I turned on my data on my phone because I had been saving data with airplane mode. Turned on my data to see if I could possibly find out if he was at Dry Valley, because if he was, I was going to have him drive to Monticello Lake, which was the next aid station in line, have him drive to Monticello Lake and pick me up, because I was like, I can't do this. I got to the point in the race where it was taking me so long and my heart was racing so much that I was like, I'm at my limit. I can't get this race done with as much problems as I'm having breathing. And I was moving so slow and having such a hard time getting the oxygen in that I thought I might be done. But I just wanted the option. I didn't think I was done at that point. I just wanted the option of having him there just in case, because I still had, at the point where I was texting him, like 8 miles to go. So the text came in that, and I'm going down this story because it's kind of a long, a big part of what my race was about. I tried to get him to come to that aid station so that I could possibly drop, but at least make sure that he was going to be at Dry Valley, because I knew that I had backed up myself in my timing, and my timing had warm clothing. I had packed some stuff that he was going to be bringing. I had warm clothing at Dry Valley that I didn't anticipate needing earlier because of my time that I was going to arrive at Dry Valley. Might be confusing, but there were a bunch of reasons why I wanted him at Dry Valley. But his text read, data came in, and he's texted me and said, all set. Jeff Browning gave me a ride to the Geyser Pass aid station so that the car is there when we finish my pacing duties. And he brought me to Road 46 where I'm going to start pacing you. So I'm all set. And I was like, oh no, he's now stuck at the aid station where he's set to start pacing me, which is 30 miles before Dry Valley, which is where I thought he might be able to crew me, which is where I thought I might be able to get warmer clothes. So now I know I'm stuck going all the way to Road 46 without seeing anyone. So that kind of got into my head, and I got to did the descent off of this new section of race course to get to Monticello Lake, which is where I had a drop bag, but I didn't have a crew. So I got to this Monticello Lake aid station, and I decided while I was out there that maybe I'm having such a hard time because I haven't really stopped to have any real solid food, and maybe I just need to rest more. So I'm going to eat a bunch of food there, and I'm going to take a nap, and I'm just going to try to reset because that's what I'm going to have to do. It's the only option I have. So got to the aid station, put down a burger, told them that I wanted to sleep for 20 minutes or a half hour. I said, set the timer for a half hour. If I wake up, I'll wake up. So now it's really cold out because I'm at Monticello Lake, probably, I think it was like 8 p.m., something like that. 7. No, I got in while it was still light. So it was like 7 p.m. Let's put it that way. Something like that. 7:30. And I was supposed to be there at 5, I think. 5:30, something like that. So I'm a couple hours behind at this point. And I got to the point where I got some blankets, started to sleep, and heard that Taylor was coming in. Taylor Morris was coming in behind me. So I was like, no worries. I'm just going to sleep. Don't care. Came back up out of my nap. And as I was falling asleep, I had this plan. I'm going to ask Taylor's crew to go get my pacer. Okay. I'm going to ask Taylor's crew what their plan is. So that's what I did. I was like, okay, where's Taylor's crew? And they're like, we're right here. I said, okay, what's the plan? What's your guys' plan? Are you guys going to Dry Valley? And they're like, well, the guy that's pacing him currently is going to take our other pacer to Dry Valley, and then he's going to head back in to go to sleep. So I went and talked to his pacer. I was like, hey, when you get to Dry Valley, can you make sure you don't leave before I get there? Because I said, I think I'm going to have you take me to my pacer and take us to town so I can get my car. I had a whole plan, right? I was going to have his pacer pick me, I was going to drop at Dry Valley and get my pacer and, get the whole thing taken care of. So my plan was, to drop it by Dry Valley. So I started the next section, 17 miles. I had heard Taylor left the aid station a couple minutes before me. So like, all right, I'm just going to make sure that I get to Dry Valley about the same time Taylor does. I'll just, stay in line. He's right ahead of me. I'll make sure that I do what I have to do to get there before his crew leaves. So on my way down, it's mostly a descent, but guess what? There's some climbs in it. And I could not run downhill. I could not run uphill or hike uphill. I mean, it was so difficult, so tough, because I was coughing up all this phlegm that I had in my lungs. My lungs were just shot, and I couldn't get enough oxygen to like push my body. I was like, I would say my heart rate. Oh, let me back up. My watch died at mile 108. So I didn't have a watch any longer. I actually took the watch off. I took the watch off, and I took my little battery pack, my backup battery pack, off. I took my watch off and dropped my little backup battery in my drop bag at Monticello Lake, which is the aid station that I just left from to get to Dry Valley, because I knew I was going to be dropping at Dry Valley. So I didn't need any of that stuff. And it was just extra weight. The watch was dead anyway. So I don't know what my heart rate was, but I guarantee it was not, I wasn't able to push very hard. So I'm looking for Taylor's headlamp on my way down to Dry Valley, and I don't see his headlamp anywhere. And I see way up in the distance, I was like, I thought I saw a headlamp. It might've been a car, because I got to Dry Valley. I knew I was about 2 to 3 miles out, and I was like, Taylor's so far up there. I said, his crew's going to leave before I get there. So I went and ran as hard as I could for like 2 miles to get to Dry Valley. And I come up to the Dry Valley aid station, and I'm like, is Taylor still here? And they're like, who? I said, Taylor, the leader. And they're like, what are you talking about? You're the first person in. I was like, what? So now I'm all concerned, because I'm like, what happened to Taylor? He went off course. I know he went off course, because there was one point in time that I went off course for like a quarter mile. There was no ribbon telling us to go down this one road. And I just so happened to open up my app that I had, my tracking app, to look to see if I was on course. And I was like, no, you're not on course, Jesse. So I went back to the spot where it was on course, which was probably a quarter of a mile away. And I was like, the spot where you looked, because there was a trail marker, but no ribbon. The spot that you looked, that was the spot. And I was thinking to myself after I got to the aid station, I was like, Taylor went off course there, and he's been off course for the last couple hours. I was like, oh no. I was all worried.
Is that the spot where you saw a headlamp?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. I thought that's what you meant.
It wasn't a spot. It was a couple miles after that.
So I love this plan to drop. Like, you're just really trying to drop out of the race, and it's not working, because now you're winning.
Yeah. I even sat down on the ground. I was like, oh my God. I was like, I can't believe that I'm saying this. And you're probably thinking I'm insane, that the leader of the race wants to drop out. I was like, but I am just having the toughest time. I can't get any turnover, even though I just ran like 2 miles as hard as I could. And it was probably still like 15-minute pace, but I was like, you know what? I said, it worked for me on the last one. I said, I'm going to eat something and I'm going to take another nap. So right before I took I ate a bunch of food, and the aid station volunteers were amazing. They're like, what do you need? We have everything you need. They were taking such good care of me. It was like I had a crew. But they're like, yeah, okay, we'll set an alarm for 30 minutes. And right before I went to sleep, Taylor popped his head in the tent. It was so funny. All I saw was his head come in. I was like, oh, there you are. I was like, what happened to you? And he's like, nothing happened to me. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, we never really went off course. He said, maybe it's because we left that aid station and I had to go to the bathroom. So I went to the toilets. So maybe you got ahead of us at that point. And that's what it was. But the whole way down to that aid station, I was chasing a headlamp that was never there. Nobody was ever there. So that was hilarious in my opinion, that I was never even chasing somebody. I was chasing a ghost. So did my 30-minute nap there and told myself, well, I made it here. I was like, I'll be able to make it to road 46 and we'll see what happens at that point. So the next 2 sections, and I say 2 sections because you leave Dry Valley and you go to aid station called Needles, which is 13 miles away ish, 13, 14. It's ultra running, so could be anywhere from 13 to 20. On my way to Needles, I was looking down at the road and I could see Taylor's footprints in the what do they call his footprints in the sand. And I was trying to pace myself off of his footprints to see if I was running better than him. So I was hitting his footprints plus a little bit. So I was like, oh, my pace, my distance, my stride's a little bit longer than his. I wonder if the pace is longer. Anyway, that's what was going through my mind as I was going along. Slept one more time on the side of the road there. Didn't set an alarm this time. Just pull over, drop myself on the ground, and went to sleep. But was awakened by my body in pain because it wasn't moving and I was cold. So I don't think I slept very long. Didn't set an alarm, so I don't know how long I slept there, but I know it wasn't very long. But I did learn something on this section from Dry Valley to Needles. I learned that I kept seeing headlamps, or not headlamps, but car lights. And I was like, oh, that's got to be the aid station up there. That's car lights way off in the distance. Well, I would get up there and it's like, no, it's the highway that you're seeing. There's cars going all the time. So then I kept opening up the app to see, well, give me a landmark. What's the next thing I'm going to see? And I saw a road crossing. I was like, okay, I got to that road crossing. Oh, it looks like maybe 3 more miles. But I couldn't tell how much further it was because I didn't have a tracking app. It was just, Gaia. And I didn't have a watch, so I didn't know how far along I was. So I remember getting so upset that I was like, where is this aid station? I was like, I could see that I passed this road. That aid station couldn't be more than 2 more miles. And I've run another 15 minutes or 20 minutes and I haven't seen any change. And I got so upset and I was like, wait a minute. I said to myself, what is going on right now in your head? I was like, why? Let's just put it in perspective. I just left that aid station like an hour or 2 ago. And what, you want the next aid station to come just like that in like 5 minutes? You don't want to really run that far to have to get to the next aid station? So I was thinking to myself, you know what? It's like, I want instant gratification right now. I just left the other aid station and I want to get to the next aid station like right now. It doesn't work that way, Jesse. Instead of this instant gratification that you want, how about, what was the word that I was thinking of? Not
delayed.
Yes. What you really want is delayed gratification. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was like a turning point in the race for me. Like, don't just assume that the aid station is going to be right there. It's going to get to you when it gets to you. And you're going to have to be fine with that. So I finally got to the next aid station. I asked them how far out Taylor was because now I have something to focus on. I got Taylor in front of me and they're like, "Oh, the first place is over there. He's still sleeping." Oh, perfect. I was like, I got here and he's sleeping. Cool. Perfect. So, I got my stuff together, and my battery on my phone was getting low. But guess what? I dropped my backup battery pack 2 aid stations ago. So I have no power. So I asked them if they had a, auxiliary power source that I could use to plug my phone in. And they're like, yeah. So I ended up having to stay at that aid station long enough to get enough battery into my phone so I could leave the aid station, because at this point, and I'm not dogging or bashing destination trails at all about course marking, but I will tell you, without having Gaia on my phone and having the course map on my phone, I would have been lost so many times on that course. Flags get taken down for whatever reason. Markings get taken down. It could be an animal that took it down. It could be course vandalism. It could be wind that took it down. It could be maybe they didn't think they needed to mark that spot. But for whatever reason, there was a bunch of times on the course where I had to question whether or not I was on course. And without that app, I would have never had it. So in my mind, I need to get my phone charged enough, because I have no idea exactly if I'm going to be on course the entire time. So I need it for the next section. So as I'm waiting for the battery to get charged, in comes third place. And keep in mind, I hadn't seen anybody for the majority of the race, other than when I left Taylor at mile 30, 40, whatever it was, until I saw him every once in a while, over the course of the next sections. But we never really ran together. We were always like meeting each other at the aid station. So we had a common, pace, we're in the same general area, but I had never seen third place for most of the race.
What mile are we at this point?
We're at mile 140, 160.
160. Oh my God.
Mile 160, something like that.
You still have like 80 miles to go, which is a long run on any good day.
Yeah. During that last section from Dry Valley to Needles, my Achilles tendon started to really hurt, my left Achilles tendon. And it was affecting my pace for sure. Like I wasn't, it would hurt so much that I wasn't able to run with a good stride, and ended up hiking quite a bit just because it's like hurting so much to land on it. So I forgot to mention that little piece, but so third place comes in and he's all fired up. He's like, where's first and second? And I just look at him. I'm like, well, you're looking at second. And he's like, oh, and I heard him talking to the aid station volunteers, and he's like, yeah, he's like the top 10. His name's Aaron. I can't remember his last name at this point, but his name's Aaron. And I do remember at almost every aid station that I came in that there was crew accessible. His crew was always there, and they always said, oh, Aaron's about to come in. So it's not like he was never in the mix up to that point. It's just I hadn't really seen him. So they're always saying this Aaron's coming in. I was like, in my mind, I was thinking, is Aaron Taylor? Do they call him by a nickname? Because I never saw an Aaron. So Taylor must be Aaron, but it's just Taylor's his nickname, or he goes by Aaron as a nickname. So I always thought this Aaron guy was actually Taylor. But Taylor comes into the aid station all fired up that he's going to, what he said was the top 10 runners never sleep. They just keep going, try to go on as little as possible. He's like, but I took a bunch of naps, up to an hour nap. And he's like, now I'm out hunting. And I was like, oh, he's out hunting, is he? Okay. So now I have something to focus on. I got somebody trying to chase me down. I was like, let's see if this works. So I left the aid station all fired up, and I ended up catching Taylor. Taylor left the aid station probably 2 minutes ahead of me with his pacer. So I could see them up the road a ways, and I just put in a couple good turns, couple good strides. I just had a good pace going on, and I finally caught up to Taylor. And I caught up to him faster than I should have, because he ended up walking. And he's like, I catch up to him, and he's like, hey, brother. He's like, how about we make this pack? He's like, let's just he's like, this is the section last year that really got my Achilles tendon and made me have to drop out of the race. He's like, what do you say we just work together and, just, make this race a fun run. And I was like, well, I'm all cool with that and stuff. But, I said, in all reality, this race is not a race for me. It is a run. And to be honest with you, you're so much faster at the aid stations that you're going to catch me anyway. And my Achilles tendon has been hurting for the last 15 miles. I said, and my knee hurts, and my adductors hurt, and my quads hurt, and my hip flexors hurt. I said, so I'm just going to keep this pace going because I just want to get to the next aid station in a good flow. And so I just took off ahead of him, told him the story about Aaron.
And then you picked up your pacer at the next aid station?
My pacer was at the next aid station. So I kind of wanted to get to that next aid station without like goofing off too much. And I did have to tell him the story about Aaron coming, that Aaron's out hunting. So I said, I'm just going to keep this movement going. And funny story, as it happens, I ended up having to stop for a minute to go to the bathroom. And my right knee was actually starting to hurt. I had pain underneath the knee. And it's because I was compensating for the left foot, I think. But we only got 15 minutes left. I better get this story going. Anyway,
it's like an audio. This conversation is like an audio book. It's going to be so
cool.
good.
Anyway, I'm sitting there on the road right in front of him, like rotating my knee back and forth, like doing it in circles. And he comes up to me and he's like, you know what? I thought about it. He's like, how I was hurting, starting to hurt. And you start telling me how your knee hurts and your back hurt or your quads hurt and your adductors hurt. And all I have is this Achilles tendon that's starting to hurt. So I'm just going to run with you, which worked out perfect because guess what? My phone was at like zero, like no battery power. If I came to a spot in the road that didn't have a marking, I wouldn't know which way to go. So I needed to use him to get to the next aid station pretty much. So we arrived at the next aid station all together. It was great. We had another, 2 hours of getting to talk to each other. Got to the next aid station. My pacer was there, all excited to get going. And I was like, now at this point, I had coughed out all the phlegm. My lungs were kind of fine. Like not great, but still like not, it wasn't to the point where I wasn't able to go. So I pick up, I'm going to try to make this part quick. I had mentioned out loud, I said, my Achilles tendon is killing me to the point where I was like, I need to know if somebody here is there a medic that could tape me up with K-tape? Because I had some in my pack. And just so happened that there was a guy there who said, my girlfriend's a PT. I know how to tape. So he taped me up. I said, okay, perfect. I'm all taped up. I said, I want to take another nap. I want to sleep here for 40 minutes. And maybe I'll get in a good 35. So my pacer had me all set up. He put me in a camper. And I was able to go to sleep for 30, 40 minutes, something like that. And when we started going again, Aaron made it into the aid station and actually left the aid station before us. Taylor was already out of the aid station like 15 minutes before us. So Aaron and I left the aid station together. So we got to finally share some miles together. Him, my pacer, and myself took off out of there. And I told my pacer, I was like, it feels like a new day. I said, I'm not feeling hardly any pain in my foot, my Achilles. I was like, it feels like we're going at a good clip. And all of a sudden, like that 40-minute nap made it seem like, and it was a new day pretty much because it's day number 2 now and it's mid-morning, like almost noon. And we're going along. We finally ended up catching Taylor at the next aid station and his pacer were in the aid station, getting some food. We ate some food. We had another good conversation. We took off out of there like a couple minutes after Taylor. Aaron made it into the aid station. Right about when we were ready to leave. So now it's a group of 3 pretty much together at mile 180, 190, something like that. To go up to Geyser Pass, which is where my pacer, Kevin, was going to leave me. His car was up there waiting for him. So these next sections were so tough for me because the phlegm started to come up because now we're climbing again. And I was getting to the point where I was, starting to get slow again. And it was the last, I would say 3-4 miles of the section where Kevin and I were going to part ways, that I was slowing down quite a bit. Like, obviously it was the elevation that was getting to me. But at this point, I was like, I'm not dropping. I wasn't planning on dropping. And I come up and we get into the aid station, and guess who's there? My buddy, Jeff Browning. First person I see. And he's like, hey, how you doing? I was like, oh, great. Good to see you. I was like, what are you doing here? He's like, I'm here to help you. I got some coffee, and he had a chair, and he's like, do you need to sleep? I was like, yeah, I think I need to sleep for another 15 minutes, but I need a burger, because this was working. A burger and a nap was almost working at every aid station. So he gets me all set up in this zero gravity chair, kicks me back. Him and his wife were there. They gave me some coffee. I get back up, or right before I went to sleep, he's like, hey, they're second place. Jeff just got in. I was like, second place, Jeff? I was like, what are you talking about? Taylor's second. He's like, no, this Jeff guy, he's moving on up. He's like, he came out of nowhere and he just got into the aid station. But you know what? He's like, I overheard him talking. He's going to sleep for like 40 minutes here. I was like, oh, well, I wanted to take a nap. So I'm definitely sleeping. He's like, no. He's like, go ahead and sleep. But yeah, if you want to do 15, 20, I'll wake you up. So I woke up, and Jeff was great. He's like, do you need anything else? And I said, yeah, another hot chocolate. Keep me warm, because it was freezing out there. And he's like, all right, here's what's going to happen is you're going to go up the next section is you're going to go and you're going to climb on this road. You're going to hit this single track. You're going to go down this single track. You're going to hit to this lake. It's going to be another blacktop road. You're going to take that blacktop road for like a quarter mile. And then you're going to get onto this other piece of single track, which takes you down through this other nice, really buff place. Got a little bit of rocks. I was like, how do you know all this? He had raced it the year before, but he's like, oh man. I was like, how do you know all this? And he's like, I just got that kind of mind. Anyway, he set me up. He's like, just go up this climb, just set a good pace. If you set a good pace and just keep on point, he's like, and he takes a nap. He's like, he might start coming up on you, but you'll stay ahead of him. So took his advice, went up the climb. And this is where sleep deprivation really started coming into play. I'm going up the climb and I'm thinking to myself, okay, just keep a good pace. The good pace that, was just a hiking pace, but all of a sudden I found myself like slowing down, and then I would just wake up. I was sleeping, standing up. It happened like 3 or 4 times.
Oh my God.
And I was like, all right. I finally got to that single track he's talking about. And I remember running down the single track going, why are we running down this single track without taking the tools we need to fix the trail up? I was like, we need tools, we need rocks, we need to bring the rocks in to set them in place. But we're just like doing this, and we're not bringing any of the stuff we need. So yeah, stuff was coming into play for hallucinations for sure. But I remember going through it, going down the single track. I remember hitting the road that he was talking about, and I was like, all right, I'm on this road. So I'm like doing a good turn of speed. And I remember looking back up, and I could finally see some headlamps, and I didn't know if they were heading up the road or if they're heading down. And I just remember running down this road, and all of a sudden I looked back and I saw a headlamp, and I was like, that's got to be like within a couple miles of me. I was like, oh no, he's coming. So I remember hitting this blacktop road and saying, I got to just go. So I dumped all the water out of my handheld bottles. I got rid of all the extra weight that I needed, that I thought I didn't have. I kept my fluid drink, my electrolytes, but I dumped all the excess water that I didn't need, even took some out of my pack, thinking that I'm going to come up on the aid station in no time, because it's cold out too. And so I did a really fast turn on this blacktop road, shut my headlamp off, and then looked back. And I saw his headlamp up there, and I'm like, I don't know if I put time on him or not, but I said, I'm just going to get around the corner, turn my headlamp back on, and just go. So this next section, and then I looked at my Gaia app, and I was like, wait a minute. It looks to me like for the distance I've gone and the distance I still have to go, I said, it looks like I still have like 6 miles. And that kind of played a trick on me too, because now all of a sudden I dumped all my water and I have to get to the next aid station. And so I was just like seeing the bushes were all equipment, different pieces of equipment, like a horse and buggy. It was a lawnmower. It was a car. It was a bulldozer, because I'm in heavy construction, right? Heavy equipment. I'm seeing excavators. And then when I would get to the tree, it would be like, oh no, it's just a tree. But the shadows were like playing tricks on me. And another couple times in this section, I would fall asleep standing up also.
Oh my gosh.
And it was,
so you've dumped all your water, you're hallucinating, and a 240-mile run has now become a race.
Yeah. Now I know I can't stop and take a nap. No, that's out of the question. But now I'm running, turning it into like hiking, turning it into, wait a minute. If my buddy Jeff Browning was here, what would he be doing? He would be running. Get your ass going, Jesse. So I would start running again. Every time I would slow down to a hike, it's like a flat road. Nope, get running. So I would start running again. Finally, I'd get to the aid station, thinking that the course directors are playing some trick on me, that there is no aid station, that all the other racers are going around and they're taking a shortcut and they're coming in. They already got to the aid station and I never saw them pass. These are all the things that are going through my mind. So I get to the aid station. I ask the volunteers if they have a tracker, if they know how far back second place is. And somebody says, yeah, it looks like he's about, an hour behind you. And I'm like, oh, great. So I take something to eat. And then somebody else comes up and they're like, oh, no, he's only like a mile back. I was like, what?
Oh, my God.
So I spit all the food out. I got my pack and I was like, I got to go. So I took off. And this is the first time during the race I looked at my phone and I had enough charge in my phone to turn data on. So I turned my phone on to see, and I went to the website and I turned my tracker on to see where he was. I said, I have to get to it was a mile and a half. They told me it was a mile and a half till you get to the actual trail, the Porcupine Rim Trail. It's going to be off on the right-hand side of the road. So I turned my data on while I was on the road and I said, I'm going to look to see where he is. I said, I have to get to that trail before he leaves the aid station because that means I have a mile and a half gap on him. And at the pace we're going, that's got to be like a good 10 minutes. So I turned my tracker on, and when I hit the trail, and guess what? He left the aid station. I was like, shoot. I was like, now I gotta go.
Yeah, so he's coming for you.
He's coming
for
me.
The hunt. He
was on the hunt. And at that point in time, up to that aid station, I was just wanting to stay ahead of him, not really like racing. But now I'm like, I have to go. Every little climb that I came to, every step up on the rock, I did with effort. I was breathing hard. I was pushing it on the downhills. I was pushing it on the uphills. Now my right Achilles started to bug me. So every time I would jump off a rock, I'm like, oh, that hurts. Oh, that hurts. So now I got 2 bad Achilles tendons that are going on. As I'm looking at the tracker, I looked at it maybe 4 or 5 times, but you have to stop. You have to stop and like zoom it in and look back and like see the distance and then look at the ping to see how far back he was. So I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I was like, I just started going. So I put in a good effort knowing that if I just keep the pace that I'm going, I still have a little bit in the tank if he catches me that I can push on. So I get to the most beautiful portion of the course, which is heading down Porcupine Rim toward the river. And I'm not able to enjoy it because I'm in race mode and I have to focus on the trail. And we get to I can see now I turn the corner to the canyon and I can see the river. And I can look up a ways and I can see that the road doesn't cross the river that takes you into town. So I'm like, I was like, I got to do this big, long canyon yet. And he's coming. I was like, I sure hope he's way back there. Wouldn't you know, about 150 meters from the bike trail that goes along the river. And you drop down out of the canyon and hit the bike trail. That's the last 3-mile section to get in. There's like this little hourglass piece on the trail that kind of loops up and around, and the trail kind of comes within like maybe 20, 30 feet of each other, but you have to do this like little hourglass piece, which is maybe 100 meters. Guess who comes around the corner? Jeff. He comes around the corner. Our eyes make contact. He looks at me. I look at him, and he's like, Jesse? And I look at him. I'm like, yep. And I just bolted. I started going as hard as I could go. And knowing he has this little piece, and I was like, it can't be more than a minute that he's behind me. It's like 30 seconds. I was like, shoot, 200 and something miles into the race, and he catches me. I was like, this can't happen. This can't happen. So I hit the bike trail, and I just start going as hard as I can. Now I'm on blacktop, and I saw a sign up on the road. It said 3 miles. That's how I knew I was 3 miles from town. And I'm like, I sure hope 3 miles means that's the end of the race course. And Jeff Browning was heading the other way on the canyon, driving up the canyon or into the canyon. And he leans out his window. He's like, you got this. He said, he's 0.3 of a mile behind you. And I was like, 0.3 of a mile in my mind. I'm like, that's nothing. I gotta go. So I was running down this bike path. I don't know how fast I was going because I didn't have a watch, but I felt like I was doing 6-minute miles. That's what it looked like as I'm going. Could have been, maybe it was 10-minute. I don't know. All I know, I was going as hard as I could. Jeff came back the other direction and he's like, you got this. That's all he said out the window. And he took off to go to the finish line. And I saw a guy on a bike that was biking opposite direction. He turned back around and like a minute later he came past me. He's like, there's nobody back there. I'm like, I don't believe you. I didn't tell him that, but I'm like, I don't believe you. I got to keep going. Spit's flying out my nose. Like I'm not able to like catch, I'm just going as hard as I can. And I get to the spot where I can see the road goes across and it's a bridge underpass. And I get underneath the underpass and that's maybe a quarter mile to the finish line. And Jeff's there. And he's like, there's nobody back there. You got this. I was like, are you serious? There's nobody back there. Are you sure? And he ran me the next couple 100 meters in. And there's some video of it. He's holding his coffee in one hand running. He's like, you got it. I was like, no way. So yeah, finally I could breathe. It was like a 5K race to the finish of the Moab 240 based on the fact that Jeff was coming. I didn't know how far back he was, but I didn't want to look either. I never looked back.
What was the final gap?
Sorry. So I finished.
When you yeah.
I finished and it ended up being 5 minutes. So either either he saw that I had a faster pace because I know we were on that bike trail and I know he could probably see me. I didn't know I tried to see, I don't know if he could see me or not, but he probably knew that the pace I was running, that he wasn't going to catch me. Maybe he backed off a little. I don't know. I didn't really get a chance to talk to him about it. Maybe we talked about it, but I don't remember because I was out of my mind when I finished. So 5 minutes. Yeah.
Oh my God. What an incredible story. Maybe you were running 6-minute miles.
I did look back at the tracker pings and one of the pings, I don't know the distance between the two pings, but one of them said I was doing 10 miles an hour. So that's a 6-minute mile. So, yeah.
It's just incredible, to come full circle with this conversation. We started with talking about how amazing the body is and how, it can put itself into a gear of healing. And, the gear that you found to finish that race is it's just such a miraculous thing, this body that we ask so much of, and what we can do with your mind saying like, I'm not giving up first place, and what the body can do in those moments. It's just what a spectacular finish. I'm sure it's something that you don't want to relive because, oh my God, being chased like that so close at the end of a huge race. But man, what a great story. Like literally a great story. This whole podcast was your amazing story. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it sucked at the time to have to push that much and that hard at the end because you're just so taxed. But you're right. You're athletes. So yeah, the mind is crazy because I didn't feel 1 ounce of pain while I was doing that bike path. It was just go.
So at that moment, like people are listening to this, and I think, like you said, we're athletes and people who listen to this are athletes, and we bump up against that moment where you just want to toss in the towel and you wanted to so many times, but some sign or something wouldn't allow you to. How can you, and I don't even know if you have looked back and put that into perspective of bumping up against that moment of just wanting to fold and yet be able to run 6-minute miles towards the end? Like, does that give you evidence that I'll use the term, anything is possible and all things are possible if you just give yourself that opportunity?
Yeah, for sure. I would say it's happened to me before. I have dropped out of a number of races. I have another story about Tahoe Rim 200 or 100 mile that I told Kira I was dropping out of that race 50 miles into it. And, I was in 4th place at the time. And she's like, you're in 4th place. Why are you going to drop? It's like, it's not about being in the placement. I don't care. I hurt so much. I have to drop. And it's about, even if you think you have to drop, give the opportunity to yourself to allow your body to tell you that you can't go. Now, if you're to the point where you're like, it's life-threatening, which a lot of the times I thought it was life-threatening, but guess what? It wasn't. Give yourself the opportunity to let your body tell you that you have to stop. Like, leave that aid station, and give yourself no other option but to keep going. And you'd be I surprised myself. You'd be surprised at what you're capable of doing. Your mind's telling you got to stop for whatever reason, but it is also telling you can keep going. You just have to listen to that other little part of the brain that says, no, you can keep going. Just give yourself that opportunity to do it.
What would you give your mindset a grade on this Moab 240? If you had to?
I'm gonna go both ways. I'm gonna give it a 0 from telling me I can drop. But I'm also gonna give it a 10 for, like, I don't know, maybe it was my body that made me keep going and not my mind. But yeah, obviously there's times out there where it's like, no, I can't go. And then you do. So I gave it a 0 at times and I give it a 10 at times.
And I think that sums up, ultra running, right? It's
for sure.
Man, and going longer and longer like that. I haven't touched even the 100-mile distance, let alone 240, but what an epic experience. Like, what an incredible run that turned into a race. And, I believe that everything is like preparing us for what comes next. So we shall see. We'll keep following you and see how this life of running unfolds for you. It's just amazing to hear your story today. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for going up, putting it out there. And reaching out to me, because I don't do a very good job of doing that myself. I don't ever search out these types of avenues of I guess interviews, stuff like that. So thank you for wanting to do it.
Well, it's inspiring, and someone who is in their 50s as well. When you put out there, I was watching one of your things of trying to attempt to go after the record at Western States, possibly. For a 50 plus age group, it's more of that needs to be shared, because that inspires myself, even though I like to go after big things. It's just, again, permission that we got to go after these things. The seed is planted, got to keep the momentum going. And if we succeed or not succeed, we got to give ourselves that chance. So thank you.
Absolutely. I almost didn't even do Moab. I told, like, my wife was doing Kodiak, and she's crewed me for every one of my races, so I felt almost obligated to help her at her 100. And I was like, but I signed up already, and I was like, I'm 50, I probably won't ever sign up again for it, so I took the bull by the horns and said, all right, no crew, I'm gonna go do it. And look what happened.
Yes, you never know what's gonna happen. It's just amazing. Well, we'll keep following you. And, this whole podcast is amazing about the 240. Maybe we'll have to have you back on so we can talk about, a little bit more about you and your background in running. But I'm sure that we're going to see some more amazing things from you. Doesn't sound like you're going to be stopping anytime soon. So again, thank you so much for the storytelling today. It was really awesome. And I hope somebody just plugs it in on their commute and they're just like, whoa, my whole commute to work is like this epic story. We're really like, we were kind of like hanging on the words, like, oh my God, well, what's going to happen? I love it. Like, you tried to drop, but there was something bigger that was like, you're not dropping. Like, you're not dropping. Taylor's crew is not your crew. You're not dropping. And in fact, you're going to win.
Only in trail running can you ask someone else's crew? Like,
oh yeah, only in trail running. Yeah, you can do any
would they
of
be
that
kind
stuff.
enough to share?
They were all for it too. They're all, we'll do it.
Of course they were. Of course. Awesome. Well, thanks again. And where can people follow you? Are you active on Instagram?
I'm not very active. I did post about Moab. I didn't post anything about Hard Rock, and I think I've posted about 5 times this year. So you're not going to find a lot of content from me. I find it so hard to find the time. If that seems like it's a weird statement, it's just because I don't do it very often. I'm not very fluid at it, so it takes me forever to do a post. So by the time I start to do it, I'm like, I'm over it. I can't find pictures. I don't know how to attach them. Kira could help me, but I'm like, I got to do it on my own, and I got to say my own thing, and you can't type it for me. So yeah, I don't post a lot, but I do have an Instagram account. I think it's Jesse Haynes. So it's my first name, my middle initial, and then my last name.
Okay, perfect. So for those listeners that only want 5 posts a year from you, they're going to get on over and give you a follow.
You can come see me at a race of sometime, just like you guys did. Hope to see you guys too.
Yeah, go check out.
In person.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, even just in the research of this, I was like, I want to do Ray Miller, Sean O'Brien, all these beautiful races up like in that Malibu area. And I know she's got other races around like in the Orange County area. But you'll be seeing us for sure. So I look forward to that in the future.
Thank you guys so much.